Hi friends, for Read Aloud today, I have a book about Martin Luther King Jr. because on Monday we didn't have school because we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And this book tells us about what he did. And then I also have one about wintertime. It's called Cozy. So I'm going to start off with this one about Martin Luther King Jr. And this book is by Marion Dane Bauer, and the pictures are by Jamie Smith. Today, many people of all races celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Now, see, today's Wednesday. We celebrated it 2 days ago on Monday. But when Dr. King was a boy, he couldn't even go to the same schools as white children. He couldn't play in the same parks or eat in the same restaurants. He couldn't drink at the same water fountains as white people. But his mother always told him, "ML, don't you ever forget that you are just as good as anybody." Young Martin believed that. He believed it so much that he grew up to teach that message to the world. Dr. King said, "You are just as good as anybody," and many people believed him. See, he went to our nation's capital and he made a big speech. You might have heard of it. It's his I Have a Dream speech. We'll hear more about that book or that speech in a book later this week. Black people sat quietly at lunch counters just to show that they belonged there. They refused to ride buses that made black people sit in the back. And they walked alone into schools to prove that black children had the right to learn besides white children. And because so many people believed Dr. King, at last they changed the country's laws. Children of all races now can learn at the same school. They play in the same parks. And they sit wherever they like on the bus. They eat in the same restaurants and they drink at the same water fountains. Because of Martin Luther King Jr., children of all races now walk together as sisters and brothers. And it says, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., remember. And the other book that I have for you today, friends, is Cozy, and that one's by Jan Brett. Storms rolled over the tundra when Cozy the muskox was separated from his herd. He was used to being with his family. His mother and father had named him Cozy because his silky coat was so soft and thick. Cozy braced himself against the wind, and his thick coat warmed him like a blanket. In a tussock, a mother's lemming pups were squeaking loudly. "I'm cold, I'm cold, I'm cold." She used a triple carry to tunnel them toward a new spot where she saw a towering mountain of fur. In no time, the lemming family settled in next to Cozy's left hoof. "Shh," she whispered, "quiet voices, and that muskox will never notice us." Do you see them? Yeah, they're right down there. Snowshoe Hare, feeling chilly, had the same idea. Master Muskox, he asked politely, may I wait out the storm under the protection of your very thick coat? Cozy was happy for the company and well aware that a lemming family had snuck in. He said, welcome, Snowshoe Hare, but mind those lemmings, quiet voices and gentle thumping only. Snow whirled and plumped. Suddenly, all grew white. Was it a clump of snow that hit Cozy on the forehead? No, it was feathers. When Cozy opened his eyes, he was looking into big yellow ones. The eyes belonged to a snowy owl who always had a request. Oh, magnificent Omi Mac, would you be so kind as to give me shelter? The wind has tumbled me terribly. Cozy knew that snowy owls and lemmings and snowshoe hares were not always fast friends, but he agreed with some conditions. House rules are quiet voices, gentle thumping, and claws to yourself. Those are some good rules. Arctic Fox's nose was turning blue. Her bushy tail wasn't warm enough, and every time she wrapped it around herself, the wind unwrapped it. Thinking Cozy would make a good windbreak, she sidled up next to him. Do you mind, Mr. Muskox, if I unfreeze my nose in your thick fur? Cozy was happy to welcome a new guest, but eyeing her sharp canines, he answered, for the harmony of all, quiet voices, gentle thumping, claws to yourself, and no biting. As winter went by, the storms grew worse. The wind blew and blew, and a low, humpy shape appeared, swaying and shuffling. Its coat was covered with ice balls. Shaggy beast, it growled. I fell into an ice floe and am chilled to the bone. Can you help me? Cozy was happy to invite the Wolverine in, but added the house rules. Quiet voices, gentle thumping, claws to yourself, no biting, and no pouncing. Cozy's new friends cleaned their coats, preened their feathers, napped, and were glad for their comfy shelter. But then, above the wind, the animals heard yip, 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 yip. A team of huskies, always on the lookout for a good thing, barreled into Cozy's big bulk, flinging the creatures in all directions. Their musher, a sea otter, looked on in dismay. Hi, the lead dog grinned. House rules, course the jostling lemming, snowshoe hare, snowy owl, Arctic fox, and wolverine. Quiet voices, gentle thumping, claws to yourself, no biting, no pouncing, and be mindful of others. Cozy, wary of the lead dog, who was looking a lot like a wolf, shook his horns to make sure the huskies understood. As time went by, the wind calmed a little and the Arctic sun climbed higher in the sky. The animals felt more at home every day, but Cozy had spring fever. I want to find my family. How can I move with these visitors underfoot? The house rules were stretched every day. When was a nibble a bite? When was a hoot quiet or loud? There was bumping, making faces, and no one was saying, I'm sorry. The Cozy Lodgers started to head towards Spring's home. Cozy hadn't felt so free and breezy since he was a calf. He jumped, he gambled, and then in the middle of a gleeful leap, he saw his herd. They all formed a circle, babies in the middle, but Cozy felt curiously alone. Then the breeze carried squeaky and growly and whistling voices. See you next year, Cozy. Meet you when the snow flies, Cozy. The snowshoe hare thumped, 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 as they all called. We can't wait to get cozy with Cozy. The end. So Cozy was actually being a very nice friend. But then they found out if they're together for too long, they all had to go their separate ways. Thank you so much for joining me, friends. I'll see you tomorrow.